Welcome to the Equity Check podcast, a podcast from the Office of Commissioner Rodney Ellis. I'm your host, Patrick, and this is our very first episode. We launched this show to pull back the curtain on how local government works, and more importantly, who it works for. Harris County is one of the largest employers in Texas. It takes thousands of people to keep it running. From janitors to dispatchers, cafeteria workers to clinic techs, these are the people who keep our buildings open in the morning, keep them clean, and help the public every day. But too often, essential workers are treated as expendable, and yet they show up when no one else will. Rain or shine, they're there when the doors open and are still working when everyone else has gone home. Their labor keeps this county running, but their paychecks rarely reflect the value of that work or the dignity it deserves. In 2025, Harris County raised its minimum wage to $20 an hour for all county employees. And for contract workers, the base wage is now $21.65. This policy was championed by Commissioner Rodney Ellis and approved by Commissioner's Court. But it didn't happen on its own. It took years of effort by labor unions, community leaders, and frontline workers who spoke about what it really costs to live and raise a family in this county. It took testimonies, research, and sustained pressure. And while it may seem like common sense now, it took vision and persistence to get it done. This was a coordinated effort between public leadership and grassroots organizing. Today, we're joined by someone who helped lead that charge. Elsa Flores is the president of SEIU Texas, the union that represents many of the workers who directly benefited from this raise. She helped lead the fight for higher wages, safer workplaces, and more respect for the people whose labor keeps our cities and counties going. We're honored to have her on this show. We have brought the president of the SEIU Texas chapter, Ms. Elsa Flores, as our first ever guest on our first ever episode. Ms. Elsa, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Patrick. I feel very honored to be the first on the podcast. It's amazing. I think it's great. It's exciting, and hopefully
we wanted to bring out the big guns and start off with a bang for sure. So thank you so much for being here. And before we kind of get into the wage policy itself, I really want our listeners to know more about you. And I would be very honored if you could share a little bit about your background, what brought you to SEIU Texas, and this work on behalf of your workers.
Well, first and foremost, right, outside of what I do for work, I'm a mom. I'm an immigrant. Originally, I was born in Honduras. Came here when I was about 12 years old to this county, Pasadena, Texas.
Okay.
And went to school there and pretty much grew up there. When I got eventually I got married, and as a result of that, I ended up moving away from Texas, and then back home to Texas. So as you can see, I still call Texas home.
Right.
About in 2012. So I've been back here since then. But I thought it was important to highlight that while I'm an immigrant, I do call Texas a home because I think it's the way that we, as immigrants, we all end up feeling. We visit the place where we were born, and we still have roots there. But at the end of the day, this is home.
I mean, I'm a native Texan myself. I don't want to be anywhere else. So we just got to fight to make it a better place for all. But I think that perfectly segues into the next question about this wage increase and when it finally passed. What did it really mean to the workers you represent?
I would say what it really means is hope, right? Hope for Definitely. Something much better, something meaningful in their lives. And, specifically when you think about it, I mean, this is something that was going to raise the bottom for county workers, county subcontract workers, and allow them to not have to be making those tough choices that a lot of times they're having to do right now, whether they put food on the table or they pay their light bill, or today they paid their light bill, but that means they may not get to buy tires for their home or buy medication that they need. And so I think it's a step forward in making it just a little bit easier for those workers, and for the workers who are not at the county.
Sure.
Is that hope that maybe they could be next, and that if they can do it, then why shouldn't we be able to do it?
Absolutely. I agree with that. And To us, a living wage policy seems like a no-brainer.
Right.
We know that the cost of living is increasing. We know that housing costs are increasing, and we know that wages have stagnated, right? At the state, it's still $7.25. It hasn't been changed since 2009. But this didn't happen on its own, right? Commissioner's Court, I know Commissioner Ellis supported this living wage increase, as did Commissioner Briones, but it wasn't a no-brainer to everybody, and there still needed to be a lot of work on the ground that needed to be done. So I'd love for you to talk about the kinds of organizing and coalition building that was necessary to get this policy over the finish line.
Yeah, I think, of course, no-brainer, right? In SEIU, we've been talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour years ago. I think President Obama was still president when we were talking about this. And even then, $15, didn't get people to where they needed to be, right? It was not enough. But it needed to be done. And so for us, we became natural partners on this issue. And, but it's really a community effort. It cannot be done by one group only, and it can not be done by one commissioner only. It's a process, and we needed to first change in hearts and minds of everybody involved, and the people who were going to be voting on this process needed to be brought in and bought in.
Definitely.
Right. So with the help of the commissioner also, of being able to figure out who the right partner was going to be to bring this forth. But with us and community, we also had to figure out who the right partners were going to be.
Absolutely.
We want to have a broad group support it. But at the beginning, we start small with the natural people who could see what this could look like, believed that this was winnable, and wanted to spend the time to get it done. And then the group grew, and we became a natural stakeholder group that could work, not just with Commissioner Briones or Commissioner Ellis, but with the other commissioners, and have those tough conversations about why was this important, and why was it important for them to put also people on their team to work on it and be ready to support it. And so it was, I think, very organic after that, to making sure that we looked at not just the impact it was going to have on workers, but the impact that it would have in others. Believe it or not, people look at and compare. And we're always looking at, okay, if we do this here, how are we going to do it in other places? And how would it impact the private sector? And can we potentially then move a conversation in the private sector to raise standards for all workers? And those are the conversations that we are still having as a result of being able to win this amazing victory. Then now we can have what else is possible, and where else can we take it? Can we do it at the city level? Can we do it in other counties where we also have workers that need something like this? And then understanding that the people that say no, a lot of times can also then eventually be some of your best allies if you can win the hearts and minds, and they can understand how it could be beneficial for them too.
Definitely. And I think people also understand organizing isn't just an art, it's also a science.
Right.
And it's got to be structured and disciplined. And when I noticed that a lot of the community advocates that came to Commissioner's Court to speak in favor of raising the wage increase, disciplined, right, were lockstep and key. Everybody was feeding off of each other and supporting each other. And I think that's what it really takes. It's got to be a big tent, big strategy initiative. I also want folks to understand and have a really clear picture of who this policy touches. Can you help paint a picture of the workers who were most impacted? What kinds of jobs and people are we really talking about?
So, obviously, when we looked at the membership that we represent, it's janitors, it's security officers, right? It's people who are cleaning parks, who really have a huge impact, and probably the ones that have more to do with the community, right? But most importantly, I think it's people who live in Harris County, that work for the county as well, and that invest their money right here in Harris County, right? So I always have to remind that to people, that you're not giving a job to somebody that lives in another county. You're giving a job to residents of this county, who frankly sometimes are forgotten because, especially if they're subcontracted workers, the ones that come and meet with commissioners and try to get that job are the business owners, right? But they don't bring their workers to speak about their wages. They come in, they put in a bid. This allowed I think for the first time for those workers to have a voice and to say, wait, don't forget about us.
Right.
We also need to have a livable wage. We also need to be able to take something home and not have to worry about doing two jobs because what I do for the county is not enough. So I thought it was important to highlight that, when we won that vote, I have to tell you, I walked outside the commissioner's court and a worker was sitting there who is the people that work in the security area where they're checking your bags as you come in. And we were excited. And she said, oh, what happened? And when I said that, her immediate was like, oh, wait, does that include me? Because to them, they were just so surprised. And I said, yes. And immediately like, she started like, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So, we sometimes don't even realize the impact that it's going to have, but just to be able to say, no, every worker in Harris County, whether you're a subcontract worker or whether you work directly for the county, if you're making below $20 an hour right now, you're going to be making at least that much. And if you're a subcontract worker, there's a different amount. And to be able to say, and then you don't have to come every year to ask for more because there's a mechanism now in place that is going to take a look at how much they have to go up every year. That is just unheard of, especially in any other county that I know. It's just not happening. And so it was very substantial. And I think as this thing comes into play, you're going to start seeing and hearing stories from workers on what this meant.
Definitely, and we're excited to hear those stories. You touched upon subcontract workers, and for all Harris County employees, the minimum wage is now $20 an hour, but for subcontracted contracted workers, it's going to be $21.65 an hour. We've had some delays on implementation for our contracted workers, but I do want our listeners to understand why it was so vital and important that contract workers were also included in the final policy.
I think if anything, for me, that was even more important because they're the ones who don't have any representation a lot of times to even talk about what those wages are. And a lot of times, I don't know that this is true, but I think business owners only think about their bottom line and you have to think a little bit broader than that, right? You can't maintain a good staff and you cannot maintain staff that's committed if you're also not thinking about what this means for them. And, so I did hear some pushback from business owners that felt like you're going too fast, so this is going to impact our ability to do business. And I think that is unfortunately very short-sighted again. Short-sighted because I think it benefits them as well. There's more, your ability to retain staff. Yes. Your ability to have people actually make enough money so that then they can go back and spend that money, potentially even to some of those same business owners. Right. Again, they're not spending that money outside of this county. Whether you're a construction company, whatever, you are dependent on people being able to pay those taxes so that then you can get more jobs. And there's a whole chain of it. And it starts with the workforce being able to have enough money to be able to reinvest their money into our county. Right. So I think it's a little short-sighted. If you think about business actually being able to thrive if people have the money to spend it. But they don't, and their mind is like, well, if they need more money, we can offer more overtime. Why are we making workers have to make that choice? Why are they the ones who have to make that choice? That in order for them to make a livable wage, then they just have to spend more time away from their family. That they don't have enough time to be home to help their children with homework, or a Saturday to be able to go to the park with their children. These are just some basic things. And so to this group of workers, I think it's even more meaningful because normally we don't think about them. Like I said, the ones that come to speak at Commissioner's Court or the ones that come and make the play to get that contract are the bosses or the managers. And I'm not hating on that. I'm just saying those are not necessarily the people that come to it. But the day that we were passing that vote, if you saw, the majority of the people who spoke there were the workers who did not want to be left out and they wanted to be there. But I also saw a lot of good, responsible committed business owners who said, no, this is the right thing to do, and they can see the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And that's what it's all about is making sure that people understand what the long-term benefits
Yes.
are to a policy like this. We know that working class people are the biggest contributors to our economy.
Yes.
And, I don't want to get into the
Drive.
economist, capitalism thing about it, but it is true, right? They are the biggest contributors to our economy. And when they're paid a livable wage and they're happier and healthier, companies retain them longer. And that's better for a company's bottom line.
And they're going to live right there in the county. They
Right.
don't have to move away and
Right.
and do all of that. Right?
Exactly.
They live and spend their money right here.
Right here.
That's more taxes, more revenue.
Definitely, absolutely. And I do want our listeners to understand, kind of back to the organizing piece of it all. You deal with a lot of decision makers.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say decision maker, these are the folks that have the power to shift change, right? And they take many forms, right? It could be a county commissioner, it could be the mayor, it could be a city council member. But I do want our listeners to understand what was most effective in persuading decision makers to say yes, to get them on board, whether it's a county commissioner or a business leader, or even, someone who's in the working class that would be positively impacted by a wage increase, but maybe was a little hesitant to get into the fight.
So I always say that the best way to move an elected official or the decision makers is to actually get them to know the people that they're going to be touching.
Totally.
And listen to what it's like for them to live on a wage that doesn't take care of their family. And frankly, when you're talking about commissioners' courts or even at the city level, it's not even that hard because these are people that they see every day.
Right.
Imagine going downstairs and seeing the same person every day, your security officer, or the same person coming and cleaning your office every day. But then all of a sudden you heard the story about when they actually go home, this is what my life is like. I have to go to another job, or I have to. Then you got their heart.
Right.
And so I think that when you get their heart, then there's a better commitment, right? Understanding that they still have to be responsible with their budgets. They still have a lot of other people that they have to answer to. But I think, remembering that person that they just talked to is the first step. And then, what I call the sausage making begins. The policy
Sure.
people get in, and then they start looking at the studies, and they start looking at the impact, and they start doing all of that. But I think first things first is, understanding the people that are going to have an impact, and that they're their constituents, but they're more than anything else, they're people that work right here in the same building with them.
Definitely.
Right? But that there's such a huge gap sometimes from the ones that work in the office to the ones that are helping to clean this building and to keep your community happy at the parks and at the other places. So I think it takes that first.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of our organizers and advocates who are just getting into the game don't understand. In Congress, there are hundreds of members of hundreds of representatives in Congress. There are 50 U.S. senators. Even at the local level, there's dozens of city council members. There's only 5 people on Commissioner's Court, right? A county of almost 5 million people, right? All you need is 3 votes to make a positive change. And that's all you need to move. And if you can show commissioners the people that they represent are going to be positively impacted by this policy, they're going to be much more likely to get on our side.
It is, and obviously we want all 5 votes. Every time we bring something, you want a unanimous vote. It's meaningful. It was like, wow, it was so needed and people got it, right? And while at first I think there was some hesitance, at the end of the day, that very last vote we had recently where we had to kind of extend the thing, once we dealt with that issue, right? Like, then we were able to get, okay, then we're fine. Right. And it moved unanimously. So I think you always strive to get unanimously. Definitely. Because to me, whether you have a D in your thing or you have an R in your thing, if you can make the case and get all of those folks behind you, then you did a good job, right? You did a really good job. And at the end of the day, it is going to benefit everybody.
Yes.
In the county, one way or another.
Right. It's not a left versus right issue.
It isn't. It's a common sense.
Right. It's a common sense issue because at the end of the day, we're one of the largest employers in the state of Texas, and the people that keep us moving are the ones at the bottom.
That's
and
it.
They always have been. So Harris County, we might have been the first to make this change, but that doesn't mean we have to be the only one. And I know you touched upon this earlier, but what do you think it'll take for other counties and cities to adopt this policy?
every time I try to do this type of work, one of the first, regardless whether it's at the county or we're trying to move a very specific policy, elected officials or even their policy people, the first thing that they will ask is where else are they doing it? And the second question is like, no, don't tell me how Chicago's doing it. Don't tell me how California's doing it.
Sure.
Tell me in other places like Texas, where else are they doing it, right? Because sometimes people hesitate about being the first.
Right.
I was very encouraged that, Harris County decided to lead. And I think now I have some place to point to, right? Because in the other counties, they've done stuff, but not as wide as this, and probably haven't gone as far. They've done, pieces of it. But now I have a place. When they ask to me, well, where else is it working and how is it working? And can you give me an example or can you give me a piece of a policy? I have a place to go to and say, hey, right here in Texas is being done. And so, for us in SEIU, and I think some of my other labor partners, because again, we didn't do this together alone, we're looking at where else. And Dallas has some pieces. Fort Worth has some pieces. We're trying to figure out if that's another place where we can make that happen. Recently, we've been looking at in El Paso, figuring out if there's some work that we could do there. And we always look at where people are at, and we like to go as far as we can go, but we'll take smaller increments if
Sure.
we need to, or, and you have to kind of gauge that as we go on what we can get. But when you have the right stakeholders and the willingness and the people committed to work it through, we get our foot in and then we go from there, right?
Right.
But yeah, for me, it's just having a place right here in Texas that I can point out to goes a long way.
Exactly. And if the third largest county in the U.S. can do it.
Exactly. And then I get to say and brag about that when I go to my national meetings, right? When people say, well, wait, why are you in Texas? And in Texas is going to be hard and everything is harder in Texas. And sometimes it's because the only thing they see are the, what I would say, the challenging parts.
For sure.
Right? The challenging, because that's what the media picks up on.
Definitely.
It would be good if they picked up on the good stuff that we're able to accomplish, because we are organizing, we're being strategic, and we know persistent, and we don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
But we are changing Texas.
Yes.
Texas is changing. The county is changing. We've changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we can't stop there. And
That's right.
The demographics are changing, and the people's minds and hearts and minds are changing, and are not willing to stay with the status quo. Unfortunately, we still have a leadership body that wants always to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And they try to make it even more difficult for people to make the change that they need to make. But if we organize and if we stay steady, I think we'll be able to change those things too.
That's right. When we fight, we win.
Exactly.
You've been in this work for a long time, and I want folks to know what keeps you going and what gives you hope right now. Even with all the challenges in our state, this was a huge win.
Yeah.
What keeps us going?
I'm not gonna lie to you. It's a rough moment, I think, and we look back in history, and we're gonna look at this as some of the toughest years,
Yes.
right? The attacks that started with attacks on women's rights, and then they just keep going. Attacks on immigrants. We villainize people. We talk about making this country great again. I would argue the country is already great, and we're going to be even better. But it's not by taking steps back, but we're figuring out a path forward. And what keeps me going is when I see that people have resilience and not willing to give up. And small victories, you might say, right, have to keep you going, so that you can embrace them, and it gives you the chance to go for again. So I would say something like this keeps me going, because I was like, okay, we just won that, and which is the next one that we're going to do. But you have to kind of take that moment to sort of embrace that, and understand how meaningful that is. And sometimes that doesn't happen because we have a lot of fights. So I think, just taking a moment to think about the impact that it's going to have right now, but it's also the impact in the future, and then it gives me strength to keep going on the next one.
Elsa Flores, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This wage increase was a statement about what we value. Public work should not come with private hardship. It should offer stability, dignity, and a path forward. By raising the wage floor for both county employees and contracted workers, Harris County set a new standard. It proved that fairness is indeed a policy choice, and when people organize, government can deliver. To learn more about the policy or how to support similar efforts, visit www.harris.gov. hcp1.net. We started the Equity Check podcast because so much of local government happens out of view. But these decisions shape our everyday lives, from wages to health to safety and beyond. Commissioner Ellis has always believed that justice and equity starts close to home. This podcast is our way of sharing that work, spotlighting the people behind it, and inviting more of you into the conversation. I'm Patrick. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.